Hello. I turned that on just a second before I meant to. Hi, I'm Ian. Welcome to Ian Gamesmith. Tonight we are doing Games by Design, our ongoing series of playing games with the designers of said games, playing Descent into Midnight. We have two of the designers here tonight. Richard, who is going to be running the game, and then also Taylor, joining us as a player. And you said this is the first time you've actually had a chance to play the game. Is that true, Taylor?
Yeah, I think I've run the game upwards of like 100 sometimes. I've never been on this side of the equation.
Awesome, good deal. And then
I mean, it's a good way to start it out. I mean, I think the very first game was you and me and Darcy and Ryan, and it was amazing. So I'm excited to be on the other side here.
Yeah.
Good deal. I am super excited about this. This is going to be a three-part series. We're going to have character creation, world building, maybe initial scenes tonight, depending on how things go. And then the next 2 Mondays as well, we have 2 sessions. And for the third one, we'll actually be joined by Rich Howard. So we'll have the full design team on for our final go there, which I'm super excited about. I think that I am hoping the audio is coming through okay. I'll get somebody to double check. If anybody in chat could just double check me on the audio. I have weird lack of indication from my from my chat. We'll see. But assuming that we're all good, let's go ahead and go around and have everybody introduce themselves. You guys have already kind of started, so why don't we go ahead and start with you, Richard, if you want to introduce yourself, and then we will go around the horn kind of as we are in Zoom. So,
okay. So my name is Richard Kreutz-Landry. I'm at RKREUTZLANDRY on Twitter, which is essentially where I live when I'm not doing math puzzles online for kids, which is my day job. I'm an origami artist and now a game designer. My pronouns are he, him, and I think that's everything.
All right, excellent. Taylor?
Hi, I am Taylor LaBresh. I am the design. What is it? The title? Design lead on the
design lead.
It's not like the same thing, but we have fun, little different. For all of us. So yeah, I also do Game Closet, which is an informal chat show where we talk to all sorts of awesome queer and LGBT plus tabletop role players, game designers, podcasters. We had an archivist on, and that's really cool. You can find me on Twitter at Leviathan Files.
Excellent. Madho, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Amado Signs. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona-based amateur game designer, writing my first one right now, and I look up to all of you guys who have put one out and I've given me a hand to be here today, so thanks y'all for that.
Awesome. Yeah, welcome. And returning guest Mika, introduce yourself.
Hi there. I'm Mika, she, her. I'm just really excited to be here. You can follow me on Twitter at HIREIMIKA.
Brilliant. And then yeah, I don't think I have any announcements or anything to toss out. I am going to be doing a charity stream, but that's like a month out. In the middle of July, I'm going to have a charity stream supporting scholarships for Big Bad Con. So more details will be coming up for that as I hash out details with Ken. And I'll make sure to keep y'all apprised of that. But yeah, other than that, I think we're all good. Richard, tell us what this game is about.
Okay, so this is the part where I completely forget everything that I have ever written or read about the description of this game. So
how many thousands of words have we put together, Richard? And
I know. So let's start with the basics and we'll build from there. This is a game where you play sea creatures. They are psionic sea creatures. They are psionic superpowered sea creatures. They are alien psionic superpowered sea creatures, and they live on an alien world that in a universe where maybe human beings never existed. So you get the chance to really kind of explore like something really different, and sort of delve into that however you want to imagine it. The sort of default setting has advanced biotechnology, and psionics sort of take the place of like hard tech that you would see in our world. So you're not going to see, you know, like giant metal submarines or something like that. You know, all of this is sort of like developed in a way that you sort of grow things. Taylor's character is the cultivator playbook, which sort of specializes in genetic engineering and bioengineering and all these things. Each of the characters that you're playing is going to be an exceptional example of a psionically active creature in the world. Because you're playing sea creatures, some people might go, oh, well, I've got fins, I don't have hands, I don't have arms, I don't have tentacles. Don't worry about it. The psionics take care of that. And that's also how the characters communicate. There aren't really language barriers to speak of. The way that they do all of this is they're communicating psionically through something that's called the echo, which is sort of like the dimension next door, I guess. And so, you know, all of the denizens of this world pretty much are at least somewhat psionically active, and that's how they communicate with each other and accomplish basic tasks. With the bioengineering, you can interface with things through the echo and psionically. So let's say, you know, if you wanted to have a supercomputer, maybe it's a colony of bivalves that you psionically like jack into, right? So when you're thinking of technology and describing it, you can just sort of play with that. What else? The characters that we're going to be playing are part of a team of guardians who defend their city against a big existential threat, which we call the corruption, which can take on lots of different forms. We'll explore sort of what that means to us at the table. We'll build that. Likewise, we're going to build the setting together. So whatever this city is that we're defending, we're going to build that right after we build characters. So getting to that, if everybody wants to start in on the playbooks, we can talk a little bit about what you've chosen, what they do. You can read the blurb at the top, or you can talk about sort of your view of it, and we'll go from there. So who'd like to go first?
I'll go first.
All right.
I will be playing the Specialist, which it's cool. This one, I'm pretty sure this one wasn't around when I got to play it last year, so I'm excited to check this one out. The blurb is: you're an expert at getting your allies into and out of dangerous or questionable situations with skill and grace, whether rescuing the victims of a natural disaster, negotiating a lethal hydrothermal vent field, breaching the biotech security of an ancient civilization, or extracting psychic information from a coral hive mind. And yeah, I just really like I love the environment of this game and like interacting with the sea and ocean life. So having a character that's like really about interacting with the, you know, the hazards and kind of challenges of the environment was really appealing to me. I really dug this playbook. So
awesome. Mika, what about you? All right.
Oh, I think you're muted.
Awesome.
Me too.
Hey,
There we go.
I'm playing the Muse. Check them out. The Muse. Crafters, sculptors, singers, and storytellers. You draw on thoughts, hopes, and fears of your community and express them for all to see. Insight and understanding is reached by experiencing the world and its inhabitants from new perspectives, and your creations help them reach a fundamental understanding of themselves and the world around them. The manifestations of your imagination exist beyond the physical world, weaving the essence of the echo into physical expression of beauty and emotion that live in the two worlds, whether through a haunting song or a life-changing story or an architectural wonder. I'm really excited about this. It really spoke to me, like out of the playbooks. The last time I got to play, I was like the last one to choose, and there was only like a couple left, and I was like, this time I was like, oh, this one, front and center.
Awesome. Yep, we've got I think 10 now, right? Yeah. Yep. All right. Amanda, how about you? Oh,
Like Keehar also.
You're muted.
Oh, I just muted myself instead of unmuting myself. Nice.
It's all good.
Love it. All right, I'll be playing the Redeemed. I was created to excel at one thing: conflict. Whether through physical training, bioengineering, or psychic reprogramming, I am the center of the storm when challenges arise. Though my original purpose may have been to inflict terrible consequences on my enemies, the choice is now mine. Am I a weapon of war, a symbol of peace, or something else entirely?
All right. And Taylor.
So, this is my guilty pleasure. The Cultivator. Listen. The Cultivator is my absolute favorite playbook out of all of these, and so I was so happy when I could pick this one up. And if anyone knows me online, this will sound very me. Gardener, bioengineer, aquaformer. You coax and shape the world around you to serve your needs, sometimes at great personal cost. You nurture life and those around you, growing the tools you need to solve problems, and giving of yourself what is necessary to solve the rest.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
All right. Awesome. So, if we, I don't know if the audience can see these guys, but on the front of the playbooks, what you'll see is you'll see the blurb, you'll see a picture. Below that, we've got sort of the standard powered by the apocalypse sort of list of options to choose from. You can put your name and pronouns there. But below that, we've got some options. So there are 4 things. You've got a look, which are all sort of is it alliterative? Is that the word?
Yes.
Yeah. So they're all fun little things like that. So it's 2 words, and they're enlightened and encrusted, or boisterous and blooming, etc. We had a lot of fun writing those. Then we've got the gifts, which are going to be essentially you can think of them like your superpowers. They are either psionic gifts or bioengineered things that your particular character specializes in. Attitude, so just what it sounds like. And then home. Now, that's not necessarily going to be, the kelp forest or, the littoral zone or, something like that. We tried to get a little bit more abstract with them after the first couple of iterations. So we can have lots of fun with those. You'll notice that there is no specific species or anything like that. So you can play anything you want to. We've had people who've played tiny shrimp. We've had people who've played leviathans. We had someone who played all the consciousness of all the plankton on the planet, I believe. There was one time we had the concept of echolocation as a character, and it worked. So you can get as wild as you'd like to with that. Does everyone have some things in mind for that for their characters?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
All right, let's hear about them. So Ian, let's start with you.
Sure. So I was thinking, I don't know, I've been going back and forth on this all day, but I think I kind of want to go with like a jellyfish like thing, but with, instead of kind of the normal thin dangly tentacles, I'm kind of seeing this like big wing sort of frilly tentacles coming out from the bottom of it.
Okay.
And I think it's on the large scale for relative to other species in this area. It's not whale size, but goodly sized.
Yeah. Okay. And what kind of attitude do they have? What are their gifts? Where are they from?
Yeah, I think that for the gifts, there is one of them is called multisense, and I wasn't exactly sure what you guys intended by that, but I was kind of curious about it. Is that
you tell us what it means.
Okay, great.
It's one of those kind of games.
Sure, yeah, great. I just wanted to see if there was an intention about it. No, I like the idea. I'm always fascinated by the senses beyond the 5 senses, like proprioception, chronoception, and stuff like that. I think it's really fascinating. So I think I one of their gifts is going to be multisense, and I'm just going to play with weird kind of sensory experiences.
Okay.
Kind of, I don't know exactly where that's going to go, but just going to play with stuff in there. And then I think the other one I'm gonna go with is telekinesis, just because it's a it's a big floaty blob thing, so that'll kind of give it a more meaningful way to impact the world around it.
Okay, so with that, like I was saying before, if you're playing a tuna and all you've got is fins, basically if you need to interact with things, you've got basic telekinesis, but in your case it would be like telekinesis with a capital T, right?
Gotcha. Cool.
Awesome. All right, and then what are you thinking of for the home?
I think that's one of the options is too many teeth, which is just fantastic.
I love that one.
But I think that I am gonna go with a snug crevasse. I think that these jellyfish have like a very specific breeding ground that's just like a narrow, like possibly thermal vented shaft. That is where it's kind of like the spawning ground where they all return to, and where all of this type of thing come from.
All right. And then did you have an attitude in mind?
I think,
and we can always build on that as we go too.
Yeah, I think it's sort of playing into the multi-sense thing. I think it's going to be probing. It's going to be very curious and kind of like always kind of pushing on boundaries and kind of.
All right, Mika.
Hello. Where to start? So for look, I went with tangled and transparent because I feel like colony is the wrong word, but we're gonna go with colony of kelp and like long seaweed.
Oh, awesome.
And I'm very, very old because, as parts of me grow, parts of me die, and I've been kind of going on for a good long time. I'm kind of getting that weird eternal vibe.
Awesome.
As far as gifts are going, I have distracting presence because I'm and plant control because why not?
Why not? Yeah. Perfect.
For attitude, I will be very eccentric.
Okay. Love it.
And I'm gonna say my home's a hidden oasis.
Awesome.
Nice.
Awesome. I will definitely want to hear more about that later.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we'll get there. All right, and Amado.
All right, I'll be playing. Oh, wait, do we want to do names yet or just looks?
If you've got a name, go for it.
I'll go with Keehar. They, them. It is a sort of cyborganic penguin.
Nice.
Amazing.
That's just this built by sea creatures who have never seen a penguin in their lives because it's an alien world. But they've decided that the perfect weapon in this world would be basically what we know as just a penguin.
That is fantastic. I love it.
And it is a polished. I couldn't decide between polished predator and mailed monstrosity, because that's how I would be seen around here, as like this thing that's it's got these weird like scales that aren't really scales, they're feathers, and they look like they're always polished because they have like their own oiling and stuff like that. And then also like just because I'll go down to its gifts. The two I've chosen are malleable body and transferable consciousness. So basically, most creatures have like a nervous system or something like that. But Keehar is just an entity that is probably closer to the like farther along, connected to the echo than one would expect from like a normal creature. And so like its consciousness is just everywhere. And so when its body or when their body like it doesn't know pain or they don't know pain or anything like that, they can just change their body whenever they want. It can just crack and
amazing. Okay.
and change into whatever it needs to, whatever its body needs to be, and its consciousness at the same time can like move in its own body and between other people and stuff like that. So it's a weapon that can consume anything for its own energy and then build upon itself and sort of reform its body at will.
Cool.
Whoa, I love
that.
And
so it's attitude because of all this, because that's all horrifying to everybody. is it's stoic. It's just like playing it cool the whole time. It's like, well, you know, this horrible corruption has killed all these creatures. It's like, oh, and we needed their senses to be able to fix something. It's like, all right, I just pick one up, and then like its senses are my senses because I just transfer my consciousness into it. And they're like, that was my uncle, and it's just like, no, now it's mine.
Oh man, that's
yeah. And so this Keehar is from, I couldn't decide once again between home-wise between Spines and Spires and the Boneyard, because before this, when I was researching this, I was looking at the Antarctic and how under the glaciers there, like they regularly crack, and there's like there's ocean between the glaciers and the ocean floor, and it's not that deep, but it's very bright because the light comes through the glaciers, and there's just white light everywhere, and it's the clearest water around. But there's this specific phenomenon that happens with the brine that basically causes there to be underwater waterfalls that look kind of like rib cages, like bones just going down like that. But it's basically the Dead Sea inside the sea, and it's just like in these glaciers, and that's where Keehar is from.
That's awesome.
That's where they made that egg.
So good.
They made it in the ice, where like it couldn't really reach out and touch a lot of things because and that's like its fortress of solitude. That's where the egg lives when it's not being used, when they don't need it.
It's like Wolverine and Superman and a penguin mixed together, and I love it. Amazing. All right, Taylor.
So I'm going to be playing Pando, and Pando uses we and our pronouns because we are the collected embodiment of all living things.
Wow.
Pando is actually a real world phenomenon. In Utah, there is a stretch of forest that's it's thousands of acres, and it's all the same quaking aspen tree. It's one tree that sprouts up, in an entire forest. It's all the same interconnected root system. It's the same living organism. It's the same environment. And this huge, ancient phenomenon is 80,000 years old or something.
That's awesome.
And that I took as the inspiration for this character. So it's the interconnected life force of all living things. We are boisterous and blooming. For our look, so we have the energy of life, and we consistently put out that vibrancy to strengthen and energize our friends and community. And our gifts are wave manipulation and information control.
Interesting. Okay.
So since we are the interconnectedness of all living things, we have a scale that allows us to manipulate currents and change how water flows, and with that we also have a way of both supplying and also restricting information. So maybe a predator needs to find out where their next prey is going to be, or maybe a prey needs to be obfuscated from a predator's watchful eyes. And Pando kind of controls the life force of that community. We are very flamboyant, so like that boisterous and blooming, we are full of the joie de vivre. And we really love being alive is the thing. And there's an obvious choice for my home, which is within a bloom, and so I think we find ourselves the most incarnate inside any blooming underwater flower.
Oh,
very
man.
Cool. I dig it. That's very cool. Can you guys hear that siren?
I don't know other games that do this. That's the thing. You're you got a murder penguin and a horse and a jellyfish and a kelp thing. It's okay, awesome. Cool. So that is sort of the first introduction to the characters. Ian and Mika, did you have names that you were thinking of?
Yes. My name is Nariales.
Nariales. Okay. And
I think their name is Call.
all right. And what are Nariales' pronouns?
They, them.
They, them. All right.
Same with Call.
And, okay. Call us?
Call. Just like you would call someone on the phone, Call.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Perfect. Okay. So that is sort of the first introduction to the characters. If you go into the playbooks, this is where we get to sort of the fun stuff that defines kind of what these characters can do mechanically. We've got our stat array. So similar to a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse games, we have a small array of stats. In particular, we have 5. And they are as follows. We have hope, altruism, community, calm, and drive. And again, because it's a game that focuses more on the relationships between these characters, their state of mind and their emotions, you're not going to see so much, strength and con and all those kind of things. It's not really about can you swing the sword and hit something. It's more about can you withstand the emotional consequences of the things you have to do together to fight the corruption. Sort of like masks, we have conditions that if you're affected, you get a -2 on your rolls. And they each match up to one of the other stats. So we have despairing for hope. We have selfish for altruism. We have isolated for community. We have angry for calm. And we have conflicted for drive. And then inside of the playbooks, each one has sort of a signature move that you get as sort of like the basis, and then there's a selection of other moves that you can pick to sort of hone what you'd like to do with the character. Since we're doing a relatively short game, if you'd like, you can pick one move that you think you'd like to use and then have one reserve that you can slot in whenever you like, or you can just pick your additional 2 moves beyond your base move. Let's see. You'll also see some corruption moves, which we probably won't get to this time. But the way that that'll work is if you generate enough corruption, which works in the same way that basically like experience does in other games, as you accrue it, once you hit a certain number, you clear the track and you gain a corruption move. And corruption moves are fun because they let you do really cool things that are really terrible. And we can talk a little bit more about that once we get into defining the corruption and talking about the city and sort of how that works. So if everybody's got some moves picked out they'd like to go through, let me know. Does everybody have them picked out?
I do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So Ian, let's get back to you. So
Sure.
What are Call's moves?
Okay, so the specialist's like focus move is get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want me to go through what that does real quick?
Sure, just a little bit.
Yeah.
Just remembering what it does.
It's lets you scan the environment, which is kind of like the perception roll analog, with their best stat with calm, because they're very focused and not distracted by anything around them. And then when you act as a team, which is one of the special moves in this game, this get the job done also adds benefits to that. So if I get to add my calm to the results, and if it's a hit, I get to add certain like bonuses to how we've planned out our strategy of how we're going to try and accomplish a goal. So
cool.
And then I'm also going to take Follow Me, which is whether through psionics, biotechnology, or intense training, you can travel quickly over long distances and take your allies with you. So it's like a teleportation kind of thing. If you, the less you know something, the more the less you know your target, the more dangerous it is. It can cost corruption to do this, but I think that's kind of cool. And I think that the way the way this looks for call is that they will just like literally enfold people into, with their tentacly wings, and they're normally kind of like a translucent, like bioluminescent, but they'll just like go opaque and then open up, and they'll be like as though nothing happened to the people inside, but it will open up into a new location. Effectively, is kind of how I'm viewing that happening. And then for the other one, I was going to do not on my watch. You're an expert at defending the innocent and using your surroundings to your advantage. Whenever you use the environment to defend an inhabitant, roll plus hope. On a hit, choose one, and it gives you advantages for basically whenever you're using the environment to kind of protect people. So
very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Now, on the back of the playbook, there are 2 additional team moves, and these are ones that essentially let you sort of guide positive interactions with the team. And so if you want to read those guys out, or just give us a quick summary of what those guys are, because you get both of those.
Awesome. I thought you had to pick those. That's great. So my team moves are and ignite your bones, which is a fantastic title. When you put yourself at risk to bring a lost or injured inhabitant to safety, clear corruption. If the inhabitant was a PC, your actions give them hope, and they also clear corruption. That's excellent. And then the second one is a common current. When you find common ground with an ally, adversary, or rival, mark harmony.
All right. Awesome.
Cool.
Okay, Mika, you're up.
All right. So the Muse like focus move, I guess, is Heart of the Beholder. Whether through dance, music, sculpture, or other expression, your art manifests itself in ways that give others insight into themselves, the world, and the echo. Your art inspired by the melding of the physical world and the echo that flows behind it, giving you deep insight into motivations, emotions, and stories of the world around you. So it's when you create art, you roll plus hope and has benefits for yourself and others.
All right.
And then I also took Show Me the World. You know how easy it is to get lost in the dark moments of the world, whether through observation or personal experience. When you show someone something beautiful about the world, roll plus community. On a hit, ask them if they embrace the beauty you've shown them. If they say yes, they may clear a condition. If they say no, mark a harmony. And you get to ask questions, which I like. And then for the last one, I'm taking Now You See It. You can use the skill to make objects appear to be something other than they are. So.
Lots of fun with that one.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And then what are your team moves?
Made with Love. When you give an ally a heartfelt and personal gift, you or your ally can clear a condition. And True Connection. When you share a tender moment with an ally, you or your ally may clear a corruption.
All right. Awesome. Amado?
Very cute.
Playbook moves, right?
Yeah.
All right. Focus move is called Heart of Violence. Like to make a choice in it. Do you want me to read out the whole move?
All right. You can do just a summary if you like, or you can read it out. Whatever you feel like.
I'll just read the whole thing. Conflict.
All right.
Verbal, physical, or psychic is where you feel the most at home. You may not seek out violence, but when challenges arise, you know you have to get it done and how to do it. In your mind, you wish the world would remain at peace, but in your heart, you know peace is often the calm before the storm. So I am choosing Eye of the Storm, which is when you remain calm during a conflict with a powerful opponent, ask your allies if they think you can prevail. If they say yes, clear a condition. If they show concern, mark harmony and take +1 forward to prove them wrong. And 2 moves in addition to that I get to choose. The first one is Go to It Laughing. When you face a threat with joy in your heart, roll plus drive. On a +10, you surprise, frighten, or awe your opponent, and pick 2 items from the list below. On a 7 to 9, choose one. The current you surprise, frighten, or awe those nearby. So I guess that's different. That's not just your opponents. That's just whatever's around, which makes sense with what I've described so far. So the choices are: the current threat ignores your companions. You take +1 on going against antagonists in the scene. and you keep yourself out of danger. Well, we'll forget about that one. Never. And
We'll make these interesting.
yeah, and the other move I'm choosing, because all you guys are such, you know, lovable, cuddly Care Bears, I have picked internalized pain. When you shrug off a significant insult or injury, you may choose to mark corruption instead of marking a condition. So I don't get worse at things. I just get corrupted, and then you guys fix it, I hope.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hope. Perfect. And then what are you looking at for the team moves?
All right, let me scroll to that. All right, so I have 2. Team player. When you offer earnest praise to a friend, clear a condition. I think that's me. I get to clear a condition. You guys just get to listen to my praise. And the other one is guardian. When you use violence to prevent direct harm to an ally, clear a corruption.
All right. Awesome. Taylor? You're muted.
Still muted.
Yep.
There we go.
I'm like, I should be nice and like polite and just mute my mic when I'm not talking, and then I forget about it. So the cultivator's signature move is Seafoam Green Thumb. You are a master aquaculturist and bioengineer with a connection to the flora and fauna of the ocean world. You nurture a vibrant garden and tend to schools of creatures, both natural and bioengineered. So I have a garden. My garden gives me 2 benefits, which are armored constructs and a bioelectric mainframe. So I'm thinking that there are like these little created invertebrates, like crustaceans, that kind of like fiddle around and keep my garden clean. And I would love to imagine that they're like coated in a fine fuzz that as it rubs up against other bits of my garden, it creates a static electric like current that can be used to power things in our community.
Awesome.
I read the other day about carbon nanofiber fabrics, which just like you wear a cell phone charger, and as you like walk around, it builds up enough electric current to, I mean, not a strong electric current, but like enough to charge your phone or, you know, that kind of stuff. So I'm thinking of different ways that could be reproduced like naturally. My garden also has a liability, which is something that I have to deal with on a regular basis to keep it alive and keep it thriving. And my garden is hungry.
What does your garden eat?
I mean, I'm sure we'll find out.
Feed me, Seymour.
I'm just a mean green mother from outer space. And when I spend downtime tending to my garden, I get to do cool things with all sorts of fiddly bits and stuff to play with. And then my 2 non-signature moves that I chose are the Reef protects its own through genetic manipulation, bioelectric triggers, and psionic activation. I can rapidly create a garden in the surrounding area. Whenever I grow a garden to defend my allies, I will gain +1 ongoing to defend another, which is one of our basic moves that we have. And then any ally that I successfully defend gets +1 forward. So the other move that I have is Buds, B-U-D-S. I have a talent for nurturing friendships, sometimes even growing new friends from seeds or spores. When you grow a helpful creature or plant, roll plus community, and I get to choose some options. I will never be able to choose all 4, but there are 4 options. Mobile can move on its own. Vocal can speak and understand language. Tactile is substantial enough to move objects. And docile, not overly aggressive or anxious.
I love those lists.
Yeah. And I love the choice of like picking 3 of 4, because it's like if you don't choose mobile, it's stuck there. If you don't choose vocal, it can't hear or talk to you.
And if you don't choose docile, yeah.
And I have to clean up when he's done with it.
And then my team moves are tender loving care. When you spend downtime nurturing a teammate's emotional or physical wounds, they may clear a corruption. and fearless together. When you tell a friend about a fear you hold, ask them how they would help you face it. If they have a plan, you each hold one maneuver, which we will likely get into once we start playing. If they hesitate, mark harmony and resist corruption.
All right. Okay, so we have sort of the information about the different characters, sort of in a silo and how they are by themselves. But of course, this is a game about their relationships with each other and the community. So if you take a look on, let's see, it is on the back page. You'll see a list of links or questions or statements that will help us connect our characters to each other. So let's go through that. We don't have to use all of them, but we can sort of take turns figuring out how these characters are connected to each other and answering those questions. Again, as with anything where you're involved in another character, we always want to make sure that we're checking with everybody to make sure that both sides are cool with everything. And actually, that reminds me, we already had, before we came on air, safety discussion, tools are in place, all that. Always good to do that. So yeah, does anybody have a bond they would like to start with?
I got one.
All right.
You survived a life-threatening conflict with Pando's little friends, buds. Pando's buds. Before you became a guardian, what happened and how did you survive? What happened? I'm imagining. What's it? You know, the Sorcerer's Apprentice, or he's made. You know, Pando. They have made little buds to like do things, and the buds just they did it a little too well and for too long, and they figured out how to replicate each other, and it got a little messy, and
all right,
and so that became a sort of like that awakened Keehar. You know, somebody screamed, you know, like Lois Lane screamed, and the egg, you know, like shattered open in the glacier, and and I just zoomed over and had to deal with it. And everybody was horrified because of what the heck is that, and what the heck are those, and yeah, I probably just used my transferable conscious to just overwhelm all of them.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And so they all just went from doing stuff to just not doing anything anymore. And then like to make sure that, and then I just probably ate them all to like regain my energy.
Okay.
And so that probably didn't make Pando very happy. But
yeah, how did Pando feel about this?
I mean, honestly, it's part of the circle of life, and we are the interconnectedness of all living things. So if we can give of ourselves to help fuel another, that's probably fine. And like, yeah, I feel like Pando probably has a laissez-faire about like attitude about a lot of things. Yeah, the buds are temporary.
The community's like horror at all of this is probably not as temporary. They're like, Pando didn't even care, and that weird creature that ate all of them and just left didn't even give me an interview or something like that. You know?
Awesome.
But yeah, I'm just imagining like King DDD just, you know, like, you know, just like just inhaled all of the buds after using the mind power to shut them all down.
All right. Do we have any idea what they were up to that was that they needed to be stopped, or do we want to save that for later?
I'm trying to remember what Pando's like. What moves are on your list of things that you're good at, but you didn't choose them?
Like, what do you mean?
So like you have a list of things like mine's malleable body and the other thing. And those are the superpowers that like you fictionally have so much control over that you're not going to mess it up. But what about the ones you didn't choose, but the playbook still theoretically could have been good at?
Could have had impenetrable armor, bioweaponry, or technopathy.
Okay, technopathy. That sounds pretty good. Your little buds. Maybe they interacted with like some of the self-sustaining technology around there. and decided to just jack in, and then decided like, oh well, we could fix things up here, or whatever our job was before we hooked up to this. Now we can do it with, you know, the power of technology, except like that wasn't part of the deal, and the community was not ready for that. And so it started accelerating things, we'll say. So accelerating normal processes, but those normal processes, they require sort of everybody to be on board. They're on a schedule. The world turns. It's different in the solar system. Maybe the sun comes into play, maybe diurnal cycles. The buds, they didn't know what was going on with respect to that. They sort of showed up and didn't understand that we already were doing things pretty okay without them. And so they just tried to speed it up a little bit.
I'm imagining like if you had little nanites or something that like went out into a field to help out with stuff, and then they got into the combine and went, oh, we can help with this, and just started like mowing the entire field down.
Yeah, like, exactly. You're throwing the farm equipment in the combine and everything. Yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
Excellent.
All right. Taylor, you got one?
I do. Maybe I do.
Okay. If you want to take some time, does anybody else have one they'd like to jump in with?
So I have one that's, you know, something about Blink's past.
Okay.
What do you know? How did you uncover it? Do they know? If so, what was their reaction? I was thinking, Amado, how well known is your origin? Is it something that they kind of wear on their sleeve, or is it like this penguin thing just sort of showed up and nobody quite knows what to make of it?
It's definitely some kind of let's see, that I'm kind of, I don't know yet. So let's figure it out. I would be fine with Keehar just being an alien itself. Like that was, I don't know.
Yeah, foreign to the community. Yeah.
Yeah, just landed on this glacier, and maybe it was like a gift from the far Echo. Or something
interesting.
like that. It's just like, wow, it sure is noisy over there. Just send one to Keehar down there. Just make sure it doesn't hit. Just make sure it doesn't hit that glacier. It might lose its whole memory. You know, like that. Type
Yep.
Something like that.
Awesome.
So, like Keehar might be from like an alternate reality kind of a thing, traveled through the far Echo.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, do you have any ideas? Like, I'm pretty sure that like this question, like it's your question, right?
Yeah, I just didn't want to don't want to like dictate too much about your character.
No, I'll fix it. I'll fix it. Go on.
No, I think it's cool if like maybe, I mean, because you talked about them in like they were constructed sort of sense, right? Like, so maybe Call has an idea of who built you or what their intention in sending you here was.
Nice.
Interesting. Okay. So what sort of was the cue for Call to what do they know? Like what tipped them off?
So what I was thinking about is like maybe one of their senses is like a kind of like a spectrographic analysis, like an, you know, like composite elements sort of analysis sort of thing, and there's something that just doesn't exist, like never seen anywhere else, that's like part of the makeup of
okay, it's their quantum signature is different.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So you can tell like they're definitely not from here. Okay, cool. All right, Taylor, did you
I got one.
All right.
So Blank helped build the foundation of your garden. Why did they help you? And/or what did they inspire about it? Mika, memory is absolutely terrible, and I did not write down your character's name.
That's okay. It's Nariales. Look up the scientific name for kelp for more on that.
Oh, tight. I would love it if you were the person who helped me build my garden, especially since you are a giant floating forest of kelp.
I would love that. I was actually going to say that your garden inspired me. So,
Aw.
All right, we need to know more about this. How did this come about?
Here's a good question: is how old do I think Pando is? And I think maybe not very old. I feel like maybe this all living things only recently became interconnected.
Interesting.
yeah.
I have an idea for that. So it is new. It is 100% something new. And nobody quite knows why yet, but I think that when we get to maybe the effects the corruption has had on the world, we could definitely go into that. I've got it in my head that maybe it could be a balance type thing where you know, Pando awoke essentially as a reaction to the thing that is as of yet undetermined. Does that sound good?
I like that.
Okay,
That's cool.
so let's talk a little bit about the garden then. So what do we think it looks like, and does Nariales like, are there parts of the garden that resemble them, or are there like, yeah, what do we think it looks like, and how did Nariales help them?
For the how, I will let Mika answer. But I think for like what the garden looks like is like a really kind of alien kind of ivy that just started growing over rocks or like big formations. And we said that our home is within a bloom. We are boisterous and blooming. So I feel like there's lots and lots of these underwater flowers, which look like kind of tiny little like polyps. So they're like purple and fluorescent. And they maybe have like little mouths inside of them, but
Amazing.
yeah, I think that there really is that kind of growing bloom sort of feel to it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
And yeah, and how did Nariales help with this process?
So I think they would have just like maybe like cleared some of the like other stuff that was already kind of growing in that area.
Okay.
You know, made the space so that like all of your blooms could flourish.
I like that.
All right.
And I think that the beauty of this like just like blooming, is it like you said it was like rocky, like is it like, you know, a rockscape sort of thing, or is there just like some rocks around the place?
I feel like, yeah, the rockscape was more of like, where does the garden go, or like climb up. So I feel like it's the garden itself is maybe in like if there's a big spire of rock or something that might be a little bit closer to the sun.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. This garden went from like a like in my head like just like this flat like, I don't know, I'm from the Midwest garden. I'm so excited about it.
Yeah.
And I think this this spire garden of glory inspired one of my favorite works of art.
Ooh, okay. Ties all back in.
Yeah, back to the game, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a spire as well that I built in the center of our community. That's just kind of like, it has a lot of movement to it though, like kind of swirling about. A lot of like small other like sea creatures go there because there's always like plankton and like stuff to eat around it, and so it's always kind of like swirling with life. And that was like what I took away from your beautiful garden, was that it's a spire full of life.
Yeah.
Interesting. So like before that, had Nariales like made other like kind of kinetic sculptures that like had movement, but like hadn't necessarily had that element of like living things?
I think more had movement before, but not had living things. Like I think that brought everything together.
Okay, cool, cool. All right. Does anybody else have any I keep calling them bonds. Dungeon World, I think, was the first powered by the Apocalypse game.
Same.
Shows, right? Yeah. So, like, does anybody else have any other stuff that they would like to bring in?
I have one that's I don't know who I wanted to attach this to. Holler if
Okay.
you think it fits, but you've confided in blank about an enmity you have with an influential member of the community. Who is your rival, and how did blank react to the news? It's just
Well, if you confided in me, you know how I
that one.
reacted to the news.
I just love the juicy gossip aspect of it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If you wanted it to be me, that would be fine.
Sure.
Because I think that I would have like, because I have like this very like long-term view of everything, I just was like, okay, like that'll be fine, don't worry about it. And like you have like, you know, a regular emotional attachment to it, I'm just like, that
have
seems
an idea.
nice.
So,
I have an idea. If you confided in Pando, and then Pando Information Control just opened up the conference call to like everybody here, like, "Hey, we got a question for you."
no.
And he's like,
I didn't realize it was on speakerphone.
"Yeah, exactly." Like, call ends up on a conference call.
I mean, that's definitely an option. So one of the things about the Guardians is that they have like everything around in this world has a psionic connection to each other. That's how people communicate. That's how you can share emotions, you can share images, you can share concepts with each other. But the Guardians have a special stronger version of that, that they're psionically linked to each other. If you've played Headspace by oh gosh, is it Mark Richardson? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. You know, the idea that like if you want to, you can always share your experiences so that the rest of the group sort of knows what's going on. So that is 100% within the realm of plausibility if you'd like to go that route. What do you guys think?
I mean, Pando has information control. I think that is a very easy way to say, like, hey, we all know whatever information is needed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think that's fine. Like,
He just puts up a straw poll, or like Pando just puts up a straw poll for like all of chat. You know, like, what should call do about their rival?
All right. So then, who is this rival? What do we think? Who do you think they are? Do we want to like postpone that and sort of come back around to it once we've done a little bit of city building?
I mean, that's more in your court. Like, that's going to be your foil probably. So if you want, maybe it would make sense to build the city a little bit first, then we can link them in somewhere there.
All right.
I have one more link if we.
Ooh. Oh yeah. Let's keep going.
Just because this one is also very juicy. You once saw blank doing something personable or questionable in a hidden place. How did they react? And Ian, I don't know if we have a lot of links from your character to people, but I don't know if we have links to your character. So
yeah,
if you're open for this,
sure.
And remind me again your character's name. Call.
It's Call.
Okay.
I don't know enough about jellyfish anatomy to know what might be personal or secretive about them.
Here's the cool thing is that we are not playing on Earth.
Right,
so
Yeah.
we're not bound by actual Earth jellyfish, so go hog wild with it, friend.
I think possibly. So it's normally like a very much kind of like bell shape, you know, with its like, you know, tentacle wings out at the bottom. I think perhaps you came upon it and it was like turning itself inside out, like folding the wings up over and like inverting itself.
Oh
and kind
no!
of
Did we do the sitcom "I Saw You Naked"?
Well, I was just thinking all the bioluminescent stuff that's normally kind of contained in Central was like spread out, like almost, you know, kind of just like luxuriating out in some, you know, space. But yeah,
Like
I like that.
Diana and the Hunter.
So yeah, how did that go down? Like what?
Yeah. So what were the questions with that?
So it was, how did they react?
Oh, I think that I think that it was like a reaction of like, I think they just like tucked themselves back in and like reformed into their regular shape and probably just didn't speak of it. Like
Oh, and that's perfect for the being within, like, interconnected to everything and information control, is that, like, we've been keeping your secret. Something that we can do.
Ceiling cat is watching you.
yeah.
Awesome.
Being literally formed around the concept of sharing. Like, how do I keep it to myself?
It's fantastic.
Just whispers it to some buds and then buries them. You know?
Awesome. All right. Does anybody else have any links that they'd like to throw in the ring?
I'd throw one in, but like somebody else has to do like 99% of the work. If that's
Even better. I mean, yeah.
It is your prized possession was given to you by blank. What does it signify to you and why? Let's see. Who need?
I mean, we have a crafter in our midst. Right?
Yeah.
Like...
I think that like Nariales needs to have like given me something that like its significance.
Okay.
Its significance to me is probably unique. Put it that way. It's like one of those like, oh, what does that mean? And I'll tell them, and they'll be like, what?
So what kind of penguin are you?
I don't know. Like, what do you mean? Like, can you make that a multiple choice type question?
Like, are you like one of the ones with like the big crests? Because I feel like that's pretty
eyebrows,
warlike.
Yeah, sure. I think
penguins go.
Okay.
How about like the angrier I get, the bigger the crest gets.
Yes.
Nice.
And so like when I'm cool, like the crest isn't there, but then like it's sort of like a vent. Like you can see like the water starts quivering, like it's steaming, and like brine is coming off it and all that stuff. So it's like angry eyebrows plus steam coming out the ears at the same time.
Very cool.
But only when my calm is tested. My calm is my strongest stat. So only when that is tested, or I have the condition.
Okay.
Will that really like come out?
I was not expecting that exceptional answer. Maybe, I don't know. Tell me if you like this. It could be bad. Maybe something that looks like the crest that you can like wear, so that that isn't being revealed about you. So if you like, that's a just for you feature. How do you like that? Or do you like having the option to like show that off to let people know like this is, you should get it right?
So it's
a hat. She made you a hat.
Yeah, I made you a hat.
Or it could be like, you know, the whole I mean, it's a terrible analogy, but like the you know, professional poker players wear the sunglasses.
Yeah, sunglasses.
You can't tell what's going on, but like imagine like a battle mask that.
Yeah, no, I like that.
Something like that, like.
No, that's great because like my whole purpose is to destroy like really powerful things that I have no business fighting, and so like being able to show up with my shades up and being like, yeah, you don't look like much to me.
That's fantastic.
Like, yeah, just having the shield there, having the Magneto helmet, you know, like having that kind of thing. That prevents me from being able to be read so easily. No, sure, that's great. I like that. Thank you.
So what do we think it looks like?
I think it would be, I think the fact that it's modeled after the angry eyebrows
Mm-hmm.
but it probably has some kind of like kelp twist to it.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh! Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So it also signifies that, like, even though I'm an alien, I'm an alien here. Like, I have a bond to something that it has. Like, I probably didn't make this for myself, type thing.
Yeah, yeah. So Mika, are there other art pieces like of similar materials that you've created for other like denizens of the city, or do you think this is something that's truly unique? Is it something that other people would recognize as being your work?
I probably not here.
Okay.
I've been around for a long time, so this is like probably the first one I've made in a really long time.
Okay.
But if somebody was very well traveled, maybe in another community, they may have seen something like that. But nobody here would have ever seen anything like it.
Okay.
Yeah, if you were just able to like pull that out of your collection, it's like, oh, I have a hat that would look great on you. I'm like, what, really? And you're like, here. And I'm like, what? How do you have that? You didn't just make it. Like, I know you had it. Like, it was sitting around for a while, and so like that gives me a sense of, as new as I am, I'm not completely unexpected. I'm not completely like ill-suited to this place. Like, the place can be prepared for you, no matter how wild and crazy you are.
I like
to
that.
like accept you and love you and all that stuff.
Like, if we're looking at it that way, then did Nariales like know what they were creating when they made it, or was it something that just sort of like came to them through the echo and they were just inspired?
I like the idea that it came to them through the echo, like in sort of like like you'll need this eventually sort of thing, right? Like, this will make sense later.
Okay, cool.
That's very cool.
I'm also trying to show you guys a really great picture of a crested penguin. That is what I was thinking about when I started talking.
Okay.
Make sure to put it into Twitch chat too.
I don't know if I can make that at all happen. I'm working on it. I'll be back.
If you put it in the chat, I think I can drop it in.
Nice.
Cool. All right. So are there any more links that we wanted to go over, or do we want to jump into the city building?
City building.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Building.
Cool. So we are going to build this. Oh, there's the link. I'm sorry, I have to look. Oh my god, so badass. All right. Awesome. So what we're going to do is we're going to, similar to the other things we've been doing, ask some questions and build it together. So the city that you all inhabit, when we first started, we were saying that, oh, okay, well, the default city is definitely going to be like a reef, and you can do different things if you want. But what we found is you just start asking questions and really cool, interesting things happen when you do that. So we're just going to start with this. So to the whole group, what is a unique natural feature, neighborhood, or district that sort of defines the city? If someone was going to say, oh, you're going to blank, are you going to see blank?
So we already talked about the spire. And then you had the art. Niles made the art that was kind of modeled after the spire. I wonder if there's like several of these like spires that reach up out of the water, and the waves like crashing against it create like just a really bubbly, oxygenated like water around here. That's like just really like just almost effervescent, and like really healthy for all the little microbiology that lives in the ocean.
Oh, interesting. So it's like a bubble spring.
Yeah.
Like, with these towers. Okay. And
before we get too far with that, how attached are we to the name Spire? Because like I just threw that out as like just a knee-jerk thing, but like to me Spire is a very human word. Like
okay,
we know what a spire or a tower is, and I'm interested in seeing if we can like abstract that more and make it weirder.
Sure.
I'm thinking it's more like a giant tuning fork. Like the longer it gets, the longer the deeper the sound is that it makes when waves.
Oh, interesting.
So it's like a type of spinning flute type thing. Except it's the waves, the flow of the tides that like.
Okay, so fluke, and now I have this image in my head of like a bunch of like, you know how whales sleep up and down, some of them.
Mm-hmm.
I just have this idea of like these floating stone structures that look like whales, and they have like the flute tail that just like goes up into the air, like
Oh,
on the surface.
Yeah.
And, like as the winds go by, they like turn and rotate.
that's
and,
really
like,
cool.
Okay,
What do you
so like, here's a quick question.
Okay.
Is this Twitch stream like clean, or can I use a cuss word on it?
You can use guesswork. You're fine.
Okay. One of my like favorite like genre fiction bullshit things is
Uh-huh.
like floating rocks.
Uh-huh.
They're so
I
good.
think,
I
like,
don't know why. They're so good.
they're like a really great marker of like, hey, this is some weird shit. That's
Yeah, I immediately was like, oh, we're doing Numenera stuff. Okay. Like, yeah. So I mean, what do you think of that? So like,
I'd love to call him the fluke.
the fluke. Okay.
Is that like a collective thing? Is there several of them, or is there just one?
I hope there's several.
There has to be
Yeah.
several because they each produce a different pitch.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Yes. Okay. They are like collectively known as the fluke, even though there's several of them. Okay.
And so you always know what time it is because, rather.
One of the resonances will be stronger
Yeah.
or something.
Crashing different based on like tides.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Well, the red fluke's at 40 megahertz, so it's got to get close to sleep.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
don't need to like be anime ninjas that like look at the kittens and are like kimonos or anything to tell what time it is. Listen to the flukes.
That's really interesting. Okay, so like there's literally like a sound that the city itself generates just because of the fluke. Okay.
Imagine being someone that just moved there and like this town is so loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like getting the apartment next to the L, right? Like it's just like
Yeah.
"Gah!"
It's the whole city. Oh man. Okay. And see, this is exactly why we were like, yeah, the default setting is no, there is no default setting because then you get stuff like this. All right. So we have the fluke. We've got these resonating, floating rocks with, you know, whale tails shooting up into the air above the surface. So next, each of you is a representative of either, except maybe Taylor isn't, of a species or type of creature. So those are going to be, you know, some of the creatures that inhabit this city. But I want to know about a sapient species that is not one of you or one of y'all. So what other kinds of creatures live here? Yeah.
So
I would like there to be like very large hermit crabs.
yeah.
Like definitely the same like shape in general, like way of movement, and like they keep getting bigger and bigger houses
Mm-hmm.
and whatnot. So there's like maybe there's like effectively like detritus of like old hermit crab houses around the town.
Okay.
That's awesome.
I have a thought on that. So, if the stones themselves are sort of the base melody,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
as the hermit crabs move around and they deposit themselves and put their shells in different places, they also resonate differently. And as they move around, they can like make songs based on where they go. And like,
fascinating.
yeah. Okay. So the follow-up of that is tell us a cultural tradition about that species or something that they do. So what do they do?
I wonder if they were like the original species that settled this area, and so like their song is one that they've been playing for like over centuries, and the city's like grown up around them, you know, like repositioning shells and playing this like sort of ongoing orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
And I
They
wonder
probably
if
Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
No, they probably keep it all clean. Like if they don't.
Oh,
clean it,
yeah.
they're constantly like farming it, eating the algae that settles in the flukes and all that stuff. It probably stops sounding.
Oh,
Have you seen the videos of like the crabs, the hermit crabs, where they line up, basically, like, because when they go to transfer their shell, right, the other crabs will notice that, oh, that one over there is about to leave their shell, and their shell is about the right size for me to grow into, and they sort of form these lines and do that. So you can imagine that, like, when there's, like, when they're going to do that and they're going to switch the shells, they have to keep the song going. And I would imagine that, like, there's got to be, like, was it like with a chorus, right? With a choral song, you have
like a barbershop quartet, as you have 4 of them lined up with different pitches.
Yes, yes. And, like, you know how in big, like, choral ensembles you have to, like, breathe at different times to keep the song going and make it sound continuous?
I got an idea for that. So, like,
okay.
This thing is a giant instrument. All these stones, these floating stones, are giant instruments, and they need to be cleaned. But, like, they don't just all get cleaned at the same time. So, like, what you have is each hermit crab has a hole. We're doing a whole full Junji Ito here. It all has a hole that corresponds to a shell, and so its job is to, like, crawl in the thing, get stuck in the shell so it stops, like, pulling water through, and then clean the area, and then come out the other side and get their shell again.
Cool. Oh my gosh.
And of course, this fascinates me as the interconnectedness of all living things.
I'm sure, yeah.
So if any of these shells get lost or broken, they're like, oh crap, and they have to, like, build a new one out of stuff, and, like, everyone. It's
interesting.
But I feel like you can never exactly replace it. Like, they have to create something to fill that space. But I feel like the song is, like, forever changed at that point. But that's just, like, a natural evolution over time.
So that leads me into the next thing. What's one or more non-sapient species that inhabit the city? So a domestic species or something else. Because I feel like we could definitely tie something into that somehow. Taylor, you look like you had an idea.
Yeah. So ever since we talked about these rocks, which are, like, partially out of water, I've been thinking about marine iguanas who, like, live on the face of rocks, and, like, their whole existence is, like, trying to survive being battered by the horrible, like, storm winds long enough to, like, jump down into the water, eat a bunch of algae, and then get back up to the sun where it's warm.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
But because we're in an alien world, I think maybe they have 8 legs instead of 4.
I mean, obviously.
Seems legit, yeah.
Seems like a very reasonable number of legs.
My first Descent into Midnight character was a marine iguana. I love them. They're fantastic. My favorite thing about them is that they ingest a whole bunch of seawater, and they can drink it, but then they need to expel the salt, and so they sneeze salt out of their, like, little forehead nostril things, and will, like, generate these, like, salt horns as, like, all the crystallization happens from repeated salt sneezing. They're fantastic.
Okay, I'm gonna bounce off of that, and since we're still on the topic of this non-sapient life form, they have, like, that's how they mark, like, dominance within the herd. So, like, antlered or horned beasts fight and, like, lock horns and do all that. I love the idea of, like, the marine iguanas have something in their, like, nose pus or something that, like, makes it so that the salt deposits don't just dissolve when they jump back in the water.
So do we want to call them salt horns?
Yeah, I think that's a very, like,
that's fantastic.
name for them. I love it.
Amazing. Okay, now the next question is, I was thinking with the hermit crabs, right? They've got to repair the shells when they break somehow. So could that have something to do with, like, the salty horn material, or the
where they, like, harvest it because it doesn't dissolve? I like
Interesting. Yeah, that's fascinating. It's kind of I bet, and that would create, like, these really interesting structures, right? Because you'd have, like, the base shell, and then you'd have, like, these, like, salt crystalline sort of, like, patches and, like, horns coming off of it. That's really cool.
So that
cool
means
mental image.
If the iguanas ever stop fighting each other, the hermit crabs would never have new shells, or they'd have to make them out of something else.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's all super interconnected. It's very cool.
That's how Keehar thinks. It's like as soon as they figure out how to, not need to fight, then we're screwed.
Yep. All right. Don't mind me. I'm just writing things down.
I'm sure that doesn't bode any ill for us whatsoever.
No, not at all. Not at all.
That's what Powered by the Apocalypse fans like to call a golden opportunity.
Yes. All right. So moving on, what's an aspect of the infrastructure of the city? So, like transportation, trade, emergency services. What's something that, like you would encounter here, that is, like that makes the city go?
This is kind of on that note, sort of on like a social engineering standpoint, but and the meltdowns in the chat suggested having like a bowl-shaped location that's like the stepped forums from like kind of a Greek forum kind of an idea as like a central meeting place, but like smoothed out with like carved out sections.
I'm going to take it one step further and say that it's a massive shell.
Oh yeah,
sweet.
It's just everything is like this pearlescent, like shining, glorious thing, and whatever being or whatever like creature lived in it at one point is now like absolutely dead and gone. But like this ruined shell is the thing that we have left behind it.
So I have this picture in my head. Of we've got the fluke right at the surface, and you know how they like with the steady thing or like the the big satellites that they point up at space or whatever to like get the signal. I'm imagining imagine a giant like abalone shell or something just sitting on the sea floor right below, directly below the fluke, that sort of like channels the energies. And you know how like if you've ever been to like a really well designed theater or opera space or anything like that, like you can whisper in one part of it and you can hear it somewhere else, like how the acoustics are. So I'm imagining like something like that where it's like it is the like perfectly sound channeled space below this, to where like you can go down there and it's like, even like if the sound from above is overwhelming, it like captures it in just the right way to where it's just that like pleasant volume that like just shakes your whole soul, Okay.
Also a perfectly democratic place where everybody's voice is exactly as audible as everyone else's.
Yes.
And maybe because
I mean like psychic voice.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it has like a psychic like leveling effect, like that. It maybe it modulates everybody's psychic voice in tune with the like thrumming of the fluke. Like you can't help but be part of the song when you're inside the shell.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Okay, so what about let me ask you this: do the inhabitants of the city know why or how the shell sort of focuses the echo and the sound?
I was thinking of this all as like a huge mystery. Like the hermit crabs kind of like do their thing, and they're definitely a part of the system, but everything else is just like, God, how did this even start? Like,
Awesome, I love it. Okay, so as I was saying at the very beginning, I mentioned that biotechnology is something that is very prevalent in the setting. So what is one or more pieces of like useful biotech that you would encounter in the city? We've got the fluke, we've got the hermit crabs, we've got the salt horns, and we have the shell on the seafloor below it. Do we think that there's any other sort of like, okay, so what does everyone eat? Is there trade? Are there like, is there something that helps people sort of survive here?
XLJ Libertas in the chat is, have you seen the sunfish post? There's these giant like bony fish that like don't care. I mean, they're 90% of them is superfluous. They can have bites taken out of them. They just kind of like float into their own thing.
Whatever.
And he was saying, what if this isn't a creature that doesn't care if it's being nibbled? Like that's how it procreates, maybe. So maybe there's like this large fish that like is just like floating on the surface and is just an open food source because it needs to be broken up for its own like little life cycle kind of thing.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so
the food truck fish.
Oh.
And maybe it is like it's like the fast food. It's like, God, I do not have energy to cook. I'm just gonna go bite the sunfish. Like,
oh my gosh, I love that. Yeah. Okay. So I imagine that like part of the biotech aspect of it is like they were sort of genetically enhanced to be able to or like engineered to do that. So it would be kind of like chickens are 4 times the size that they used to be or something like that, or like
maybe there was a time of famine or something like that, and so they like bioengineered these fish to be a food source because it was like that was the only way this community was going to survive. But now they're not actually necessary. They're just sort of like there, it's still
probably just like an incredibly efficient way of like storing energy.
Maybe they're like the golden rice of fish, where it's like they have like all the nutrients that you could ever need, but like I don't know, no one else wants them anymore.
They're nutritionally complete source of protein or whatever. Where yeah, awesome. And I also love to imagine that like there's this the sound channels like rippling out, and you can see like all the sunfish like floating up near the surface, and sort of they move with the waves and the sound, and then like below them there's got to be like these super cool like shadow patterns. Like have you ever been to like a lily pond, like a really shallow lily pond or something at the park, and you can see how like as they float around, like the shadows underneath them sort of like like coalesce and as they drift apart, like something like that. Oh man. Okay, cool. All right. There are 2 more questions. So the next one is, what is a prominent cultural, religious, or natural event that's important to the city and its inhabitants?
I feel like that kind of needs to be related to the way that the city sings. Maybe there's like a seasonal sort of like crescendo of the song or something.
That's silence as well.
Silence is scary.
What do we think? Like,
I mean, there'd be no better way to find out if something was wrong than to just shut everything down for a second and be who is not respecting the moment of silence? Everybody knows, and that's like exactly when we would know like the corruption is here or something like that.
How would you even shut down the flukes though? They're like these massive floaty stone things, right?
I mean,
it would have to be at a time when like the tides were at their stillest.
Yeah.
And like all of the little hermit crabs would all plug up their holes at once. Every single hole would be plugged up.
Oh, I got it.
Okay.
When low tide comes, and maybe low tide comes like maybe once a year or something, and the water recedes, the flukes, which are normally like floating straight up, like go down into the dirt, and like their like vibrations are muted by like the muck and the silt.
Interesting. Okay, so like they float down into it, and sort of like they shake the sand and the mud below. Okay.
Do they hit the same place every time, or is it just like, oh god, low tide is coming, what building is going to get smashed this year? Like,
there's definitely like nobody cares. They build it up the same every year anyway, and you're considered to be blessed if you get crushed by the because it meant there was something wrong with it and you needed to fix it. It's basically telling you like, hey, fix your stuff. You have to because it's destroyed.
Okay.
So like they don't look at it as, oh, woe is me, I hate doing this. It's more like, this is my whole reason for living is to build.
Well, that would also explain why like this whole society of like interchanging shells isn't just built on a mountain of shells. Like if it comes down and crushes and grinds, like over the millennia, that's maybe how we get the sand in the ocean.
Yeah, I love that.
So good.
It's a big one.
It has a really good like transient feel to it, where like everything just keeps recycling and keeps going. There's better words for that. I'll be back.
No, I do like it. It does give
Yeah.
the city a very different feel. That like there are no old buildings. There's no like 1,000-year-old cathedral kind of analog because everything is known that it's going to get crushed eventually.
The oldest building is like everyone's like that's haunted. That's
Yeah.
Impermanence was the word that I wanted. Specifically, so there's like the whole like Japanese idea of impermanence, and anything that gets old is totally haunted, right? Like the 1,000-year umbrella that kills people.
Right.
Right. Okay, cool. I absolutely love that. Do we have a name for that? What do they call it when that happens?
What for the low tide moment?
Yeah. Is it just the low tide?
I think we need a different.
I think Mika had a really great name for it, which is it may just be impermanence.
Oh my god.
When the
yes.
impermanence happens.
And it's just like this huge like reminder. I mean, I feel like that's a thing that shapes the culture. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like the switching of the shells, the like destruction, the annual destruction of your homes. Like, just kind of keep moving with it. Like, the lizards from above provide. It'll be fine.
My I think it was my wife's grandparents lived in Nebraska somewhere next to this river, and apparently this particular river bend, tornadoes just loved to come through there and hit that particular corner of the river bend, and they built their house 3 times in the same spot because these tornadoes kept coming through and wiping them out, but they just kept doing it. Okay. All right.
So there's another quick question in the chat that I think is really interesting. Zeros.bar asks, so how is an idea of ancientness preserved, if at all, in this society? Is there anything that's permanent?
The song.
Yeah.
So do the hermit crabs keep up the song even during the impermanence? Like, so it's like you lose the bass notes, but there's still like the kind of the melody happening, kind of a thing.
That's the most important time to sing.
Yeah, 100%.
Definitely.
Dig it.
Well, and I also like the idea that like the hermit crabs, like I can imagine that like the salt horns are somewhat dangerous to the crabs if they're not wary. And so like harvesting that is already an interesting thing, and so like you try to grab them when they come down. And of course there's all technology and stuff to do that, to help with that. But at low tide, I just imagine that like the salt horns like go and like hop onto the sunfish like lily pads, and like that's where they live during this time. But it's the one time when the crabs can actually be on like the tail flukes of the stones. And there's something about like being able to reach that part of the stone as it vibrates that changes the song and lets them do things that they couldn't otherwise do. I love that idea, Taylor. Like, yeah.
Hell yeah.
Awesome.
I feel like that would be like the most dangerous place for them too. So it's like almost like a risk reward thing. Like, it's gonna be great if we could get up there and sing, but there are a whole lot of lizards up there.
Yeah, and like I imagine that like it's one of those things that you dare people to do, like,
oh yeah, definitely like a rite of passage, like way to distinguish yourself in the society is like how high you're willing to climb up the fluke during the impermanence.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And finally, the last thing, what is something small but special that most of the inhabitants take for granted?
So we at the beginning we kind of talked about like the bubble field being generated by these flukes.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's something related to that, like it's between the flukes and the bubble fields and the sunfish, there's like the display on the seafloor is probably unrivaled, right? Like in other parts of the ocean.
Yeah.
And I wonder if the
just like that, those dappled shadows.
Yeah, and maybe even like a prismatic kind of effect from like the sort of like layered light, you know.
Okay. What if the
distortion?
sunfish are like semi-transparent and like they
yeah, they're like prisms.
Prismatic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's so cool. We should call them prism fish then, because sunfish are an actual thing and they're awful.
Okay.
Very into prism fish.
Taken for granted would be whatever the sunfish eat.
Okay.
Oh.
Like whatever they eat is
interesting.
something
Like
no one else is eating. Like no one else eats it. No one else sees it as food. It's not. None of the nutrients in them are bioavailable to anything except that sunfish. What
if it's the salthorn droppings? Like,
seems legit.
I don't know.
Could
maybe,
also.
maybe it would be like some like algae that grow from that or something like that.
What if it's like an insect, like an airborne insect that like doesn't.
Tardigrades.
It doesn't land. It's tardigrades. It doesn't land on the surface of the water ever, because that's a quick way to get eaten. But like the prism fish attract it or something. So there's no other way for the ocean to interact with this food source other than for the prism fish to harvest it.
So I love river fishing. One of my least favorite parts about it is all the just like horrible bugs that float above the water. But the fish love it. So like anytime that you see just like a shitload of mayflies or mosquitoes buzzing around, you know that like something's there going to be eaten. So I wonder if it's these like horrible stinging, like biting insects that are normally pests.
Oh, okay.
But they're an integral part of the ecosystem.
Oh, like, yeah, don't go on the surface because you will get eaten alive by that shit. Like,
yeah.
Oh, and that's so okay. So the salthorns are not the only reason that you can't go up onto the fluke.
It's these like horrible little carnivorous insects.
Okay. Yeah, that's awful, and I love it. Cool. Okay. So we've got the prism fish, we have the and the biting insects. All right. So we haven't talked at all about the corruption yet.
oh, I'm sorry, I keep interrupting. Can we? I need a rival now that we've built the city.
Oh yeah.
Real quick too. I have an enmity with an influential member of the community. Oh no! Did I pick a fight with a hermit crab? That would be a bummer.
Oh man. So yeah, I would imagine that like the crabs have lots of social influence.
Yeah.
So, gosh, like a song leader maybe? You have picked a fight with a song leader. So what happened with them?
Man, I don't even know how that came about. Yeah, what's that?
If your buds ever like nibbled at his shell when it was his turn to like clean his, channel, and so his shell didn't get stuck in the channel when he was cleaning it, so it just like sort of like pushed him out, and it was very embarrassing because like you're supposed to, as a hermit crab, like keep your shell immaculate at all times so that you can do your job of like cleaning the inner channels of the fluke.
So I'm the one with the buds.
Or no, not buds. Shoot. No, not the buds. It would have to be like something like his shell was, or the hermit crab's shell was damaged. Maybe something you brought from the Far Echo or something like that.
What if, because because Call has multi-sense, there's some like how there's like the visible spectrum and then there's like infrared and ultraviolet. Maybe there's like an audio respect to that as well, and so like while everybody else hears the lead singers just creating this beautiful song, to Call it's awful because it hits some register that's not audible to anything else. He's like, this is the worst ever, I hate this new song leader. It's gotta go.
No, I got it.
Okay.
Yeah, because like that would be like a grave insult that like he's messing up the song in some way.
Yeah.
But like at the same time, I would think like, well, that could mean that there's a flaw in your shell and like it needs to be fixed, or like you're in big trouble.
Oh, okay.
But like that's even
He's trying to help.
Yeah, exactly. Like you could be helped, or he could be a rival. He's like, really, my shell's perfect, you know, like, and either I'm right and my shell's perfect, or you're right, and
is it like, I know there's a whole thing with like materials engineering where there's tolerances for like weaknesses within materials, or like, you know, bubbles within metal as it's poured, things like that. Like it could be something where like, you know, you've got Geordie vision, right? And like you're able to see an imperfection in the shell that's like actually dangerous.
Oh
like,
yeah.
Like, you know, that like at the next impermanence, like if they go up to the top of one of the flukes that they're supposed to and they do the performance, like it's going to shatter, or there's going to be something horrible, and you've been trying to tell them about it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh, maybe
they just won't listen.
It's not a problem when they're underwater because of the pressure, but when they go up above, like it'll like shake and like vibrate off, and like that'll make it shatter.
Yeah.
And like to have, I mean, because the song is so important during the impermanence, to have like the song leader like royally fuck it up would be a huge bad omen, right? Like that'd be
Well, and like I also think that like with those biting insects, like if they're exposed on the surface and their shell shatters, like they're not going to be in good shape. Okay.
Yeah.
You're trying to save their life.
I know.
Right.
God.
You seem like such a jerk about it.
Yeah, I was thinking to make him less of a jerk about it, I was thinking like it would be the inverse of that. So like the rival shell only works on the outside because that's the highest status activity. So like he's picked a specialty shell that's being stressed out by sort of chronic pain day after day during peacetime. But during the special time of year where it's like the most dangerous, the shell gives him an advantage. And so it would be impossible for him to give his shell up and still be able to perform during that, like, you know, and fight off all of the, you know, the iguanas, and to fight off all of the biting insects. Like, he would have to do that without his special shell if he was to listen to you. And so like that just makes it impossible. But the actual stress that's happening, this also makes it worse for you, because it means your sensory thing is picking that up every day he isn't up there. And so like and so like, and that's when it's gonna fail. Like, you know, like eventually it's gonna be a normal day and your shell's just gonna break, and like it's gonna ruin the song for everybody, and like it's gonna ruin whatever day. And you don't know when it's gonna happen, you just know it is going to happen. It's getting worse every day. And so like every time you warn him about that, like he has to say like, oh no, it's fine, I got it under control. You know, this shell is special, only I can handle it. Like, you don't know what it's like. Like, he has to like use his status and his seniority, and like the fact that you travel around and do all sorts of other stuff, or like have like certain other specialties that are outside, you know, just like stay in your lane, you know, basically. Every time you bring it up. That's just my idea, though, if we wanted to take it in another direction.
Yeah, what do you think?
Either of those are, I mean, they're both compelling in different ways. Like, I don't know what I mean.
It's your rival.
Yep.
I kind of like the original idea of it, you know, knowing that it's going to crack at the next impermanence, because it gives such a like I imagine Call is getting more and more frustrated and trying to communicate it, and it's probably just making things worse, because you know, that channel has already been shut down, but like they're really passionate and insistent about it still, and it's just caused this giant problem.
All right, so we'll definitely have to explore that a little bit later. All right, so we have sort of established the setting. So the last thing to do tonight, we'll be looking at the corruption. So this can take on all sorts of forms. We've had games where it's a big giant kaiju that you have to fight. There have been others where there's, you know, a mental disease going around. There's others where it's, you know, something just dying out mysteriously. Sometimes it's something from another part of the echo that is just antithetical to the world where you live. So, given all the stuff we've got going on here, what do we think is makes a good corruption? What's something that could come into what we've set up and knock everything down? And keeping in mind that it could be something physical, it could be something emotional, or it could just be something from the echo that begins manifesting somewhere.
I mean, this is a really physical thing, so but if the ocean levels were dropping, that would be devastating to this community, right? Because the impermanence, they've built all this around the impermanence being a regular and one-time short thing. Whereas if the ocean levels were dropping, it would get longer and longer and longer, Maybe the flukes wouldn't even be able to be sustained anymore at some point.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Do we think that that's something that, the people of the city know about? Do they think it's something localized for some reason? Or is it something that's affecting everywhere?
I think there has to be more to it than that. I think that by itself isn't
okay.
super compelling.
So we've got the shell. We don't know why it gives people access to the echo and resonates things as much as it does. We've got the fluke. We've got the salt horns. We have let's see what else. We may have a structure that has never been crushed in an impertinence. And no one knows why. Anything?
Kind of like that.
I got one.
Sure.
Or, no, go for it. Were you with me?
Yeah, go for it.
An impermanence happens. Finally, the haunted house is about to be crushed. Haunted house bounces off the fluke and damages it instead.
Oh.
Like something has just completely said hey, impermanence, we're all crushable. No, I'm never crushed. I'm indestructible.
Okay.
I'm stronger than the heavens, basically.
Yeah, fascinating. And it's but it's physically seems to be made out of the same material as everything else. There's nothing that would distinguish it. The never broken.
Yeah.
Ex Legia Libertas says in chat.
Okay, so something has rejected the impertinence.
Yeah. And not only that, but damaged the fluke.
And damaged the fluke. Okay.
And it's like a creature, right? All the spires, the other spires would be actual something made that's somebody's home.
Okay. So whatever's there on the seafloor then, what do we think that is? It could be all the homes that these creatures have. Are they coral? Are they rock? Are they living bioengineered jellyfish domes? Are they what do we think?
Yeah, I was kind of in my mind's eye at least, I was sort of thinking coral framing with when termites and stuff build the walls or the hills up like that, having that pulled up between the coral sort of frames. Sort of.
I like the idea of grown building materials.
Yeah.
The coral itself is just only the outer edge is alive, right? Everything else is just skeletons of what came before. So this would just be a dynasty.
Yeah.
Particular thing, all of its ancestors and all of its ancestors had never been crushed. And it just so happens when their time came to be crushed, they refused. They had built up some sort of power nobody knew about. And it's bad. It's real bad.
Okay. All right. So we have then this idea that this place has been haunted for a while, right? Or that there's something wrong with this. What signs have people had other than what interactions have people had with this particular area of coral that might have hinted that there was something wrong before? How have you interacted with it before?
Well, it was like it was already a folkloric, superstitious kind of place, right? Because it hadn't been crushed for so long. I imagine it's like that's what you tell kids, is like, don't go play near there or you'll never come back again. People disappear. It's like, oh, maybe the house got them, like, kind of thing. And I don't know, maybe.
Okay, so what about so Taylor, Pando has their garden, right? Is the garden on the seafloor with, in this part of the city?
So I just realized that when we first described our garden, it was on the spire or on the fluke.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's kind of like where that is.
Like your garden's on the fluke?
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Is it on just one of them or all of them?
Well, we are the interconnectedness of all living things, so I feel like it's probably on all of them, but like my garden, for like the sake of mechanical benefits or whatever, is on just one of them, I think.
Okay, so like maybe like the first part of, or where it started essentially.
Yeah.
Was it your fluke that hit?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. It would have to be, right?
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that we could like telegraph this place as being like a bad spooky place is that my buds just don't like going there.
Oh. How? Okay, so going way back to the beginning, we were saying that Keehar had to stop the buds from doing something way back, right? So what if like this area is straight up haunted, right? Like people don't go there, but adventure seekers might go there, right, to check it out. So what if like there was some sort of like could it be that the buds were doing like patrol duty around the area to like help keep people out after like some incident or something of someone going in there and disappearing?
I got an idea.
Patrol duty is like perfectly in what I think for Pando, but like they could maybe be doing probing out of curiosity.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What I was thinking. Oh, sorry. Continue.
I was gonna say, because if they're reticent to go in there, that just means that Pando wants to go in there more.
Yeah.
Saying, what is in that coral structure?
I would
Go for it.
Oh, so I was thinking like maybe the structure could be like also haunted in that like whoever goes in there and like is able to climb all the way to the top or something like that, it comes back different and like better.
Interesting.
But like better in kind of a scarily powerful way.
That makes a lot of sense with how corruption like works mechanically in Descent.
Yeah.
And so like some buds went in there to check it out for you because they're always fulfilling your needs. And when they came out, they started doing all that whack stuff that I needed to stop.
Yeah, they came in as buds and they came out as bads.
Exactly.
Oh, I saw that coming and I couldn't stop it.
Buddies, and they came out as baddies.
Yep.
Oh, I do love that buddies is a thing because
it's good. It's real good.
Also, I would think that like when the fluke fell on this structure, on this Tower of Babel, like this, that it like it crushed one of your gardens, or like it struck out, like it seemed to like strike at your garden because you came into being so recently, and it's so strange that this old structure like would lash out at something so new, but at the same time we're all trying to or it's one of the mysteries of like why did things suddenly start connecting, like why did you come to awaken? And I was thinking like maybe it has something to do with the corruption, maybe they're linked in some way.
Okay, so like if I can imagine like when is this Pando's like first impermanence as like
Yep.
Oh no! If it was the first impermanence,
Poor Pando.
Okay. So it was Pando's first impermanence, and
I'm
then
only 1 year old.
and then
Oh,
like okay,
man.
so
I'm baby.
tell me if yeah, tell me if you're cool with this. But I like the idea that like it's almost as though that particular like piece of the fluke where your garden was centered went right for it and was rejected.
Yeah.
And you're not sure whether it was calling to your garden or the other way around or what was going on, but it straight up wrecked it.
Why won't it be friends with me?
I imagine we're gonna find out.
I mean, yeah, we've got 2 sessions to figure that out.
More on that next time.
Yeah.
Mhm. All right. Let's see. All right, I think we've done that. Ooh, I love that. Okay. So I think we've answered most of the other things about the corruption. So the next thing that we're going to do, this will be the last thing, is we talked about how these characters have a very like special relationship with each other that's very strong. One of the cool features of the game is your characters have a psychic sanctuary that is part of the echo where they can go. So you can imagine like when we were designing this, the thing that inspired it was actually I was in a taiko drumming class, and at the beginning of the class they had everyone sit in a circle, and to sort of get everybody on the same page, we did a guided meditation and visualization where the instructor was like, okay, you know, close your eyes, you can imagine this space, and then each person as we went around in the circle added a detail. And so with this, the characters have, like I said, this psychic sanctuary where they can project themselves and their emotional state, their mental state, basically anywhere at any time. So it's used as a device in the game, basically to show what everybody's emotional state is, how they're feeling, and especially when you frame sessions with it, how that has changed over the course of the session. Because again, the game is very much about like your relationships, the consequences of the choices you've had to make, that sort of thing, rather than about like what you can specifically like do in the world.
Right.
So what we'll do is I'm going to go ahead and set the scene for this sanctuary, and then each of us will go around and add a detail of what their character like shares and experiences in this space. So you can imagine that, you know, if you were a shark who cruised the open waves, right, that maybe your character would have an open space in this place where you could see for miles and you could smell anything, right, for miles and miles around, and you'd have space to move and breathe, and maybe you'd have some aggression that you would have in your part of the sanctuary. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So everybody can take a couple of deep breaths and not breathe into the microphone. Okay. So the group has this psychic sanctuary where they can meet, where they can project their feelings, their thoughts, their emotional state. In this psychic space, you have the reflection of the dappled shadows from above. You have the colors of the prism fish. You hear the song through the echo, just like you do in the physical world of this city. What does Call share an experience in this space?
I think that in this space, Call feels like an extension of themselves, like an outer layer wrapping kind of a little zone of safety, almost in the same way that they have, like, you know, the outer membrane of their body, like they protect this space with that sort of same structure.
Very cool. What about Keehar? What does Keehar share an experience in this space?
There's a glacier.
Hmm.
There's just this barrier that only lets through the light, where you can go and be at peace, because the noise and all of the light, like if it ever becomes overwhelming, you can just like swim under a glacier. And the only thing you have to do is put up with the cold there.
All right. What about Nariales? What does Nariales share an experience in the space? Oh, you're on mute.
Totally fine. I was gonna go with something pretty similar, just like a calm in the water, because with all we talked about like the water's effervescent from all the like crashing waves and everything.
Yeah.
This is a place of peace and calm for Nariales.
Very cool. And finally, what does Pando experience in this space, and how has it changed since the impermanence?
I think Pando shares the feelings of all of our companions, and as our buds like skitter about, I imagine they look kind of like the soot sprites from.
Oh yes.
Because they're like tiny little urchins, but with like arms and legs, and as they skitter past each other and skitter around like you all, generating tiny little like electric currents, they buzz with excitement and also nervousness, because the impermanence was a little bit scary, and this was the first time that Pando really had to deal with anything difficult. Yeah.
All right. We can all sort of like take another deep breath. And we can imagine what it's like for these characters in this time of new crisis. And that's our first session of Descent into Midnight, guys.
Hell yeah.
I am super looking forward to seeing what we do with this beautiful disaster and what pins we can knock down.
Yeah, it's fantastic. That was super fun. It was nice to have time to kind of like explore all the different little nooks and crannies there. It was great.
Definitely.
Yeah, so again, we'll be back for the next 2 weeks on Monday, same time, 6 p.m. Pacific, and we'll get to tell the story of our little... Did we name the city? Do we name the city? Does that happen?
City.
Oh, gosh.
Maybe we should solicit suggestions.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Throw it out to the chat.
Yeah. So if you have an idea for the name of the city, pop it in the chat, and we will... I'll be back next week to continue the story. Thanks so much for everybody who hung out in chat, and especially the people who pitched out suggestions and stuff. It's always great to have those extra inspirations come in. So thank you so much for that. Thank you so much, Richard, for running and for guiding us through that. It was fantastic. Yep. And for all y'all for coming in and playing. And yeah, we will see you all next week. Thank you guys so much for coming out.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, John.
Bye.